Hey, great people. Thank you for joining us. I am Chidi Akunna.
And I am Victor Akunna.
That's our lovely face you can see on there on the photo.
Yes.
We from time to time meet with a lot of couples. We run seminars, we run workshops, we run retreats with couples, and we've had a number of them.
Absolutely.
But this particular one, we thought, okay, let's put something out for the benefit of our viewers, our audience, right here. And we know you will benefit from what we'll be sharing today. So we thought we'll just share some of a bit of what we shared with a number of couples some weeks ago for your benefits. Thank you for joining us. If you're new to our channel, this is Foundation for Family Affairs.
Yep.
Our mission at Foundation for Family Affairs is to connect hearts and raise healthy families. And I tell you, you want to get healthy. It's just for your own good.
Absolutely.
We are loving it. We are loving what it's doing to us individually, as a couple, as a family.
Yep.
It's just beautiful. And we're so grateful for that.
Fantastic.
Okay, so what we have to talk about today is building intimacy through communication. It's so funny that we have been invited to a number of places lately, and one thing they keep focusing on is communication. Can you guys talk about communication?
Yes.
It's a big thing. It's a big problem.
Absolutely.
So we're excited about it. I'll let you say something.
Yes, I'm just agreeing with you in terms of, in fact, there's a particular place that we've had to talk about communication about 2 times, straight back to back.
Yes.
Why? Because I think you figured out that it's one of the fundamental aspects of marriage that you have to sort out. So if you're talking about marriage, if you sort out your communication, you'll be able to sort out your parenting. You guys will agree on basic things around parenting. If you sort out your communication, you'll be able to sort out your finances, marital intimacy, financial intimacy. If you sort out communication, you'll be able to sort out, I beg your pardon, sexual intimacy. So communication is at the crux to any aspect of relationship, any aspect of marriage. In fact, some people will go as far to say that communication is the lifeblood of your relationship, of marriage. So for you to be able to have a smooth sailing experience in your relationship, you must be able to have a level of communication flow at a certain level, have some level of intimacy, have some level of vulnerability, have some level of connection, words, through your body language, all types of communication. Your tone, exactly. So this is so critical, it's so fundamental. That's how I titled it, Building Intimacy, because once you get this right, you'll be able to sort out your intimacy.
Okay, let's dive in.
All right. So learning outcome. So we just kind of touch about 1 or 2 things here, and then we'll move to the next one.
Yeah,
so,
of course, we can't cover everything in this session.
Exactly.
If you want us to cover everything here, you need to attend one of our sessions.
So I'll just talk about creating an enabling environments. Usually, when people talk about communication, what they don't realize is that you have to be able to focus on creating the enabling environment. So if you are into farming, or you know a little bit about farming, you understand that every seed has a peculiar soil. It has a soil where it thrives, it has a soil where it grows. So for you to be able to build the kind of communication that you want to see in your marriage, you must be able to create that kind of atmosphere where your partner, where your spouse will feel comfortable really saying what they think. There are some relationships where people don't feel safe, emotionally safe to say what they really think, where people feel that if they say what they really think, they may be misunderstood, they may be criticized, they may be shut down, they may be interrupted, there will be a number of interjections. Some people may even feel that they might be punished in terms of by their spouses withdrawing some form of opportunities or favors from them because they are really saying what they really think. So you see such people walking around as if they're walking on eggshells because they are trying to more like manage what they really think because they don't want to offend people. So you as a person, you or both of you as a couple, as you know, as a pair, you must be able to create that enabling environment where people will feel safe, where even your child will feel safe to be able to share. If your spouse has something really important to share, or they have something really a very fantastic news they want to share, a great news they want to share, are you the first person they are going to call? If they have something really bad, like something really bad that they want to share, are you the first person they want to call? Whether that answer is yes or no, it speaks a lot to whether the environment is conducive. You must be able to create the ambience.
Yes. And we have a question there for you. If you were to advise couples on what to prioritize in their communication,
Yes.
what would it be? Just think about it for a moment. If you're happy to share with us in the comment section, we'll be happy to read from you.
Absolutely.
Okay, but what were some of the options a number of people talked about? I think one I remember is listening. Yes, someone picked on listening.
Absolutely.
You know, it is important that when we communicate, I'm not just saying things. You need to be listening.
Yes.
Okay. When you listen, you're able to understand my perspective and where I'm coming from.
Listening is so critical because by listening here, we need to differentiate. We are not just talking about hearing, because sometimes people more like just oppose the two words together. Some hearing is not necessarily listening, but listening involves hearing. You must be able to hear the person. All right, but listening is, in this case, is when you actively hear and engage with something somebody is saying to you. All right, so you're not just hearing the sound of their voice or what they are saying. You are processing, you're making meaning, you are engaging with the process. You are actively maintaining eye contact, you are actively engaging, you are summarizing what they are saying to be sure that you understand what they are saying. That's the kind of listening we're talking about here. So another thing that somebody said is, to the question, if you were to advise a couple, I'm trying to remember the other point that they mentioned.
I know somebody else talked about being present, which
yes,
touched on partly.
Yes,
Okay,
yes,
present in the moment.
In the moment. Yes, thank you so much for reminding me of that. So someone did actually mention being present. In other words, you're not just, and that also ties down to listening anyway.
Yeah.
You're not just hearing the person, you are emotionally there. You are present. You're not just waiting for the person to complete what they are saying so that you can interject or say what you want to say. You are actually involved in the process.
No distraction.
Yes. Yes. Sometimes another thing you may want to do to, in terms of creating some form of ground rules as well. Yes. Where you don't just, maybe your spouse is of the quieter, personality type. You have to create that fundamental rules to be like, even if the person is telling you, okay, don't worry, go ahead, go ahead, don't worry, it's fine, whatever you say is okay. No, you have to find a way to pull that person out to be able to say what they really think as well. So just move forward. Okay, so let's just look. So what exactly is communication? One of the key ways to what we often do, anytime we want to talk about something, we want to go down to definition, because sometimes we might be running with the meaning or the definition we have in our head, but which might not be broad or encompassing enough to cover the meaning of that word. So if you look at the slide here, we want to just focus on the highlighted section that are highlighted in yellow. So the English word here, communication, was derived from Latin word called communicare, which means to impart, all right, or to participate, or to transmit, all right, so transmission from one point to the other. The word communicare is also derived from the root word communis, which means to make common or to share. All right, so fundamental to communication is that you are sharing something. And what does that mean? In a relationship, I shouldn't expect my wife to read my mind if I've not shared.
I like that you touched on that.
Yes. I shouldn't expect you to read my mind, because sometimes, particularly this happens to people who have been married for a while, where, you should expect, you should know how I feel. No, you have to communicate. You have to share what you have in your mind. You have to be able to say what you have in your thought. You have to be able to express your opinion, express your perspective on an issue. Without that, your spouse may not be on the same page with you. So that's one fundamental thing about communication. Okay, so we mentioned this earlier on, and we said that, seed not grow in every soil. Communication does not thrive in every environment.
It has to be conducive.
It has to be conducive. We have to be able to create that enabling environment where your spouse, and what you have to do sometimes is different. We have to do in our relationship will be different. What you have to do in your relationship may be different.
Yes.
What you have to do for your spouse to feel safe to communicate. By safe, I don't mean physically most times. We mean emotional safe. All right. So where someone will feel like, if I say something now, tomorrow they'll use it against me and be like, use it to criticize, and pressing. There are some people who, just because of how they were raised, when someone crosses them, they can repeat the same issue over and over again. Or someone shares a personal story with them, a personal feeling, something they did wrong, and then that becomes the person's how they see the person in their mind, and so they find it difficult to go past that kind of picture of that image. So that's not really good. You must be able to create that environment where people can be vulnerable,
open to share.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So how can couples improve communication in their marriages?
All right. We'd like to hear your own point of view on this. Also share in the comment section. We'll be more than happy to read what you have to say. How can couples improve? How are you improving? Be another way to make it personal. How are you improving communication in your marriage?
I think it still boils down to taking feedback from the other person.
Very important.
What's that one thing your spouse complains about?
Yes.
Okay, is it that you often interrupt me, you don't let me speak, or you often discount my ideas? So just paying attention to that complaint and acting on it would be one thing. Yes.
Wow, that's so important. Sometimes one of the ways to improve your own communication is to reflect, sit back and reflect and see your own tendencies. All right, some of us, without knowing, when our spouses are talking, our body language is saying to them that they are not making sense.
Yeah.
The way you are behaving, the sharp, abrasive way your body language is speaking louder than what you're saying. Like they said, actions speak louder than words. So your body language is saying, like, you are just the way you are. Your body is shaking, your eyes are rolling. Unconsciously, you are sending a signal. And communication is not just about words; it's also about body language. It's about tone.
Yeah.
All right. So, if your tone is suggesting that your spouse needs to round off what they're saying quickly, it's not good. It's not good. So, you're not encouraging communication. If your body language is suggesting that you are not open to having some conversations, some uncomfortable conversations. After a period of time, you find out that your spouse stopped bringing some kind of conversations to you because you've trained them not to bring, because they feel that you're not emotionally ready, you're emotionally mature to be able to handle some of those.
And another point I think couples may want to take into consideration would be creating time for communication.
Absolutely.
Creating time to talk. Okay, there are issues that you could talk about in a hurry, but there are issues that require the time, requires that we sit down, and have a proper dig into the matter, get into the root of the matter.
Absolutely.
And unpack it. So that's really important. It's very busy right now, but we must create that time. Don't forget that in the course of it, we're also building emotional connection.
Yes.
So it's important. We're talking about building intimacy through communication.
Absolutely.
So there's a kind of communication you have that enables intimacy.
Another point that kind of jumps out at me is when you kind of create, like I mentioned earlier on, creating ground rules. But this time around is when you disagree with each other. You have ground rules that no raising of voices, no name calling. If the room is over supercharged, what do we do? You know, do we bring a third party? Do we have opportunity to call time out? If we call time out, what is the procedure for calling time in? Who's responsible for bringing back the conversation? You know, so things like that, you need to have ground rules. Remember that marriage is an institution. All right, institutions should have policies, should have procedures, should have ways of doing things. It shouldn't be based on how you feel. All right, if people behave only on how they feel, the environment will be brutish, nasty. The environment will be toxic. All right, emotions are not. Emotion is a good emotion is not a good leader. The best emotion your emotion can do is to probably give you a signal, give you a guide, but not to lead you. You shouldn't make decisions based on emotion. In fact, experts will say when you're unhappy or too happy, it's not a good time to make an important decision.
Yes.
Because your reasoning, your rational capacity is impacted. Wait until things settle down. I read sometime someone said that you know, when you're really angry and you want to say something, sometimes, you know what, you can write it in a letter and just wait on the next day. You'll be shocked how reading the same letter you're asking yourself, was I really going to send this? Why? Because the chemicals that influencing and has hijacked your rational, you know, the emotion that has hijacked your rational part has now come down, you know, the ground levels are now, so your value system is now coming to the fore. So you are asking yourself, wow, thank God I didn't send that yesterday.
That's a good principle.
Yes.
Very good. Yes.
Okay, so how do you create an enabling environment? One of the ways you can create an enabling environment is by, you know, leveraging on your spouse's personality style. So every person has a personality style. We'll have dominant and recessive one. So what do we mean by personality? So basically, we're talking about being what we call choleric, what we call sanguine, what we call melancholy, what we call phlegmatic. All right. So for people who have dominant personality, like cholerics, you know, they like information short, sharp, straight to the point. All right. So why? Because they are driven, they are so focused, they are task focused most of the time. And so when you are communicating, if your spouse is like that, you have to find a way to communicate in bullet points, clearly. All right. And if you are the choleric part, you must be more patient with people. Why? Because if someone is a phlegmatic, for example, they may, or melancholy, they may take a little longer to communicate. Why? Because they are trying to articulate it in the most perfect way possible. Because they are most likely going to be perfectionists. All right, so we have to be able to balance that. So for people who are sanguine, for example, sometimes they can communicate in very colorful ways, and sometimes they may find it difficult to follow through what they promise. You know, so unless they develop that character part of their lives, you know. So you see many people who are sanguines, they make a lot of I'm going to do XYZ, I'm going to do XYZ, I'm going to do it. So they are just very lavish with words, very lavish with praise. Sometimes they may not follow through. So if that's you have to work on that section. Otherwise, you find yourself in a situation where your spouse is constantly being disappointed because you're unable to keep your promises. Also, past behaviors. All right. So, you know, something that someone did in the past can impact on trust today. So, for example, if you've made some promises to your spouse, just like I mentioned earlier on, and you're unable to keep those promises, it can impact on trust. Something you've done, or maybe how you communicated to your spouse in front of family members, you know, or maybe our family was around, or your family where your own family was around, and the way you were communicating with her, or the way you spoke to her or spoke to him, was highly degrading. Such a situation, instance can kind of create a very bad environment.
Yes, then we have past traumatic experiences. Sometimes you see people act and they don't realize that it's because of an experience they had in the past.
Correct.
That gravely impacted them. Okay, and sometimes we pass this on even to our children. A child does something and you lash out. You don't realize that you probably have been conditioned to lash out that way because you growing up, that was what you saw and you thought that was okay. You know, so when you get to that point where probably still talking about past experiences, you saw your parents lash out at the other, you might think that's a normal way to communicate, you know, and then just project that to your spouse.
Beautiful. So, I just to add another example that came to my mind is, so if someone who grew in an environment, for example, whereby maybe they were the last of 6 children before everybody is maybe there's a family meet, everybody is contributing before it gets to you, and like, okay, all right, so I think we know what we're going to do. So you never get to make that input because everything was being done hierarchically, okay, based on seniority. And then you find yourself in that situation whereby people did not really listen to you because they thought you were too young or you didn't know what you were talking about. And then finally you got married and then you notice that
your spouse is displaying
the same thing.
Yeah.
You know, he's making all the decisions, or she's making all the decisions. She's not even consulting. That experience can create a very, very bad experience, a situation. So you must be able to, you know, have a conversation with your spouse. You know, address some of those past experiences, past traumatic experiences, and see how you can ensure that that doesn't impact on your marriage. Okay. Another thing is that you must be able to, so if you are, one of the ways to create an enabling environment for communication is that you must, if you are the more quiet type in a relationship, you must be able to exhibit some level of courage to push back. All right, so it's not more like, you hear some people who say, no, I don't want to rock the boat. I don't want people to feel like, I don't want him to feel, I don't want her to feel. No, you must be able to speak up and say, this is what I actually think, even if it's unpopular, if it's not comfortable. And for you, who is the more dominant one that sometimes always come up with the ideas, you must create an enabling environment whereby it's okay for your spouse to push back, your spouse to suggest something. Because sometimes you see some spouses, some individuals whereby, you know, they just, because they are used to making all the decisions, now they are married, they want to carry on like that. No, you're not married. You know, when we got married, I told myself, you know what, in fact, before we got married, I said to myself, I don't want a woman to get married to a woman, even before I met my wife. I don't want to get married to a woman that everything I say is fine. No, you know, I want to get some food pushback. I want to get someone who will challenge my point of view. I want to get someone who will contribute really. And so that's what I wanted, and that's what I looked at for. You know, so it's very important for couples to be able to do that.
Yeah, I like this point. Okay, because of what use is it that I am in a relationship with you and I don't air my views. I don't talk about my feelings or my opinions. You know, in that case, I will be bottling a lot in there, and that would breach intimacy in the long run. So I really love this point. We must get to that point where the other expects some pushback, okay, and think it's okay. Encourage the other to speak,
absolutely,
you know, and air those things those views that might not be okay with you.
The next point is committed to your agreements. Now, this is very this is very important in the sense that, you know, sometimes people communicate, they have an agreement, this is how we're going to raise our children, this is how we're going to do, and then you find one or two of the spouses not following through, not committing to things. All right, so you agree that when your people come over, this is how we are going to do it. When my people come over, this is how we're going to do it. And then your people come over, you see the person just acting completely different. You're wondering, is this really my spouse? You know, that can really impact on how things are done. So you must be able to create an environment where both of you, whatever you have said, you follow through, you commit to it. It helps to strengthen the intimacy between the both of you.
Yes.
And then compassion. You know, we're talking about compassion here. You must be able to show some form of empathy for your spouse. If you don't show empathy to try to understand where your spouse is coming from, you know, you might not be able to draw out your spouse, you know, in terms of getting them to really, really, really feel like feel heard. There's something we used to say that good listening, good communication can be therapeutic.
Yes.
Where you can show some level of compassion and bring them out.
And I just love this point on curiosity, okay, because it's just practical. Okay, it shows that there is something, there is a perspective you have, which
Absolutely.
I may not be aware of.
Yes.
And we always encourage that people, generally, you just approach people with curiosity. You never know what you might learn from the other. And it is a sense of humility, really, for you to be doing that.
Absolutely.
With your spouse. You're telling the other person your opinions count. You matter as well. I want to hear you. Yes.
Correct. All right. So what are the obstacles to communication? If you see the picture here, somebody's trying to drive through, but there's a massive rock not allowing them, and then it's difficult to navigate the road to the corner because, the road is not so smooth on the other side if you want to cross or navigate. So what are those things that are creating this kind of obstacle in relationship?
Oh, I love this one. Emotional immaturity.
Emotional immaturity. So let's just look at the definition here. So, emotional immaturity here is looking at, it says emotional immaturity is a person's inability. So the person does not have the capacity to express or to cope with emotions that are serious in nature. What are some of those emotions? Like anger, like disappointment, like anxiety. They don't have the capacity to express or cope. People who are emotionally immature may also overreact. So reaction and then overreaction.
Yeah.
So you'll be wondering, maybe because something happened or they came back home and they realized that maybe the children did not tidy up the toys, or he or she stepped on a toy after a series of warning, or put away your toy, and the person react by shouting and calling names, and that overreaction for something that actually happened. Or to have trouble controlling their emotion. Right? So they struggle with that. Signs of emotional immaturity. Okay? One of the signs here is blaming others when things go wrong. Why? Because people like this, they find it really difficult to accept accept that they made a mistake, or they have a part in the system. So the best thing is blame the other person. Oh, you are the reason why I'm not doing well. Since I married you, I've not been able to do X, Y, Z. It's lack of emotion, lack of inability to take responsibility. They can't process their disappointment. They can't process that their life is not doing well, and they have a role in it. So they are blaming the other person because it's easier.
Just convenient.
It's just convenient. That's the word. All right. So that's not good. Lying to get out of any uncomfortable situation. One good thing, one thing about telling the truth, it's not just because it's a religious thing. No. When you tell the truth, even when you are at the risk of being punished, you develop character. It's a test of your character. So if you are used to lying to getting out of uncomfortable situations, or you made a commitment, or you lie, I'm sorry, we couldn't make it because of X, Y, Z, it erodes a part of your character, part of yourself, on respect for yourself.
And don't forget, you're listening to yourself.
Absolutely.
You hear yourself when you lie. So there is that point. I know it gets so busy now, but we should have those quiet moments. What do you tell yourself in those quiet moments? Do those thoughts not come back? And you reminded that you actually lied. Did you really have to lie? So it's that place of authenticity. Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay, name calling during conflict. This one is so easy that you just think that's default mode. You just get into that. And sometimes we can link this to traumatic experiences. We're talking about the exposure people had growing up. This should not be happening. We must train ourselves. You must get to the point where you build emotional muscles that even in the heat of the moment, I know the right thing to say. I know this is a no. I won't do this. Yes. then inability to control one's impulses, such as engaging in reckless behaviors. There are certain things that happen to people, and they impact them so much that they lapse into certain states. Okay, some start over drinking, things like that, indulging in other behaviors. Some binge on food as well. That's gluttony. That in itself that would be reckless behavior. So you should be in a place where you have control of your impulses. Yes.
Needing to be the center of attention at all times. Why? Because it feeds it feeds your sense of self. All right. So you can't, if people don't focus on you, the story is going the way you don't want it to go. Everybody is focusing on somebody else. You want to hijack their attention. Why? Because you want to be the center of attention at all costs. That's not good.
Okay, bullying others to get what they want, what you want. We bully people in different ways. Sometimes some people don't realize they're actually bullying. Okay, maybe you call for something and the person says to you, "Give me a day or two," and then before the end of the day, you're calling again and saying, "I really need that for this."
Exactly. Sometimes people withdraw sex from their partners because they want to bully them into doing something that they know. That they want, so denying their partner's part in a conflict or issue, denying their part rather. So, for example, you anything that happens, it's our fault. It's always our fault. You have nothing to do it. No, it takes two to tango, like they said. Two of you create the situation that you are in. Whether by directly or indirectly. So attacking others as a form of defensiveness, right? Because you just feel like, it's your way of trying to get the other person to stoop low, so you just kind of any little thing you kind of attack verbally or physically, or and then also engaging in harmful defense mechanisms such as emotional shopping, like we mentioned earlier on. So couples and relationship exercise. So we have a few questions we'd like you guys to ask yourself. This is really, really, really good questions. We hope you really pose and ask yourself these questions. So number one question is, you can ask your spouse. Both of you need to do this together in the same space. So first question is, what do I do that you like, and why do you like this? What do I do that you like, and why do you like this? Okay, how have I hurt you in the past, and how can I make it right? Okay, can you describe your picture of our ideal marriage? In other words, when you think about our marriage, what it is today and what you want it to be, can you paint that picture for me? All right, 0 being the lowest and 10 being the highest. How will you rate our marriage? So if your partner says something like, it's a 4, it's a 5, it's a 6, the next question now goes, what can we do to move 4 steps higher? So if your partner says a 4, what can we do to be an 8? All right? And make a list of everything that you say.
Why is this important?
This is important because it gives clarity. It helps you, both of you, to kind of move yourself to the same page. It gives your partner an opportunity to make a restitution, to kind of correct some of the things. Because sometimes we may be hurting our spouses without even realizing it. So it gives us that opportunity.
Yeah.
All right. So this is a case study. We'd like you guys to just read it out, and then hope that you'll be able to post your comment post your feedback in the comment section. So
James and Alicia were college sweethearts who met in medical school, became friends, and are now preparing to get married in a couple of months. However, Alicia is concerned that their marriage may eventually fail because James and herself came from a generation of broken families. What would you advise them to prioritize?
I would like to hear from you. And so for people like this who come from a generation of broken families, usually there will be patterns. All right. So we always say to people, don't just listen to what people's promises, study their patterns. And so Alicia is concerned because they have a pattern. What they have been exposed to may impact on them. So one of the ways one of the things that we would like to advise them is, first of all, it's good that they have recognized that they have that pattern. The next thing is to seek a coach, somebody that will work with them to break some of those patterns. Because if you don't break those patterns, you repeat. Once you repeat the patterns, you find yourself with the same outcome. All right, so there is a generational pattern here that needs to be broken. Secondly, they need to expose themselves to information. All right, so if the tools of the conflict management tools you've been exposed to is raising your voice, slamming doors, and walking out while conversations are going on, that's what you're going to do if you find yourself in the same situation. So the best way is to now begin to read and begin to get new information. By new information, you get new tools or new ways of managing conflict. So instead of slamming down what you've been seeing your mother do, your dad do, your sisters do, you now begin to consciously re-engineer your head. I think this book, I read this in a book called by Stephen Covey. It says 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And so the man was talking about where before you react, in a situation by you sit down and say, okay, no, this is how I always respond to a situation. Now you now sit down and say, okay, if this happens in the future, how do I want to respond to it? So you sit down and you project into the future. A similar trigger happens. This is how you are going to react to it. That when you do that after a number of times, you find out that you are reprogramming yourself. You are developing a new pattern. Your brain is creating a new neural pathway. And so you fail a couple of times, but after a while you find yourself getting used to that new way of doing things. And then you are able to now create that pattern.
Another thing they must do would be to drop their fears.
Ooh.
Okay, and that's really critical. You are not your parents.
You are not.
So you cannot be expecting to repeat the same pattern. Of course, I appreciate the fact that they need to go for knowledge, they need to go for the right tools to make marriage work, their marriage work. Okay, but don't go in with fear, because whatever you focus on gets magnified. If your focus is the fact that no marriage in your lineage has succeeded, then there will be that tendency of repeating it.
It's so important, because whatever you focus on, it's like driving. When you're learning to drive, they ask you, if you don't want to go that way, don't look that way. Where you're looking is where you drive the car to. It's just the way it works. Also, you must be able to find people that have sound marriages, the kind of marriages you want, right? Because these things are it's transmittable. If you hang around with people who have a kind of a background you have, you repeat the same pattern because you copy patterns. I think it was Tony Robbins that was saying something. He said that anything anybody has achieved, if you study them, study their pattern, you can repeat and model those patterns, you will get the same outcome. All right, so it works in the other way as well. It works in a negative way as well.
And then there must be that willingness on both sides
Absolutely.
to make the marriage work.
Absolutely.
It's not one person's responsibility.
Yes.
It takes two to make it work. Can
Yes.
two work together unless they agree?
Mm.
And then there is the spiritual part.
Ooh,
okay, you need
absolutely.
to be praying. You need to be praying. You pray for your marriage. You pray and break away from every every curse of brokenness in the lineage.
Absolutely. That's so important. All right, this is our contact, where to find us. Of course, if you watch this any other place, you can find us on YouTube at Foundation for Family Affairs, on Twitter and Foundation for Family Affairs, on Instagram, and our website at Foundation for Family Affairs. We are all about romance, intimacy, and family. So one key thing there is we would like to also talk about our Intimacy Builder program. So by Intimacy Builder program, we mean it's our customized, bespoke program on helping singles. So we have one for Intimacy Builder program for singles, where we help singles who want to get married to look at the reason why they've not been able to get married. Maybe there are certain patterns that they are repeating that is kind of terminating very healthy relationships, to help them identify and eliminate those patterns so that they can find, attract, and get married. Then we have a intimacy beta program for engaged couples, and these are people who have found each other and they want to walk down the aisle, but now there are specific areas of their relationship such as money, sex, in-laws, and things where they have varying opinion that potentially will be flashpoints. So we help them to normalize and create that stability. We have intimacy builder program for married couples, whereby married couples are able to, we're able to help them address specific areas of their relationship, so maybe finance or parenting, whatever it is, to be able to navigate and create the intimacy that they want. So in summary, communication is so critical, it's so important. Like what we said earlier on, we'll be able to mention some of the obstacles, emotional maturity, things that we need to work on to be able to improve our communication. We must be able to create an enabling environment for our spouses to be able to be themselves and be able to articulate what they really think. This is so critical. Thank you so much for joining us on this. Until we come your way again, bye for now.